77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
Una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. 8 configuraciones diferentes, intensidad ajustable, además es calefaccionado. Y se siente tan bien. Sí, una silla de masajes puede parecer extravagante. Y 2, bueno, aún más. Pero cuando esas sillas de masajes vienen con un auto, se vuelven bastante prácticas. El nuevo Volkswagen Tiguan 2025 con funciones premium como los asientos delanteros con masaje disponibles. Solo parece extravagante.
Excuse me! Taxi! Come on, what are you doing?
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
As we talk more about American exceptionalism, in just a moment we'll be introducing you to a gentleman named Michael Letts. He's involved in an organization called InvestUSA.org, and equally a talk show host of his own, The Michael Letts Show, heard on the CRN Digital Talk Networks. A background of our special guest goes like this. Michael Letts, a passionate advocate for law enforcement, national security, and constitutional values, as he dives into the most pressing issues facing America today. His show delivers insightful commentary, in-depth interviews with experts, and bold discussions on politics, crime, and the justice system. With a commitment to truth and transparency, Michael brings his experience and perspective to the airways, tackling topics that matter to everyday Americans. I myself spent some 22 years here at the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office under then the tutelage of Sheriff Joe Arpaio and now Sheriff Jerry Sheridan. My dedication goes to this man and to everybody out there who supports the Second Amendment in law enforcement. And with that, let's welcome our special guest, Michael Letts. Good morning, and thank you for staying up with us. As I know for you, sir, it's now, Saturday morning. Good morning.
Good morning. It's always a great pleasure to be with you, and thank you for that opportunity. You're doing a great service to this country by making sure the truth is known, and we thank you for it. God bless you for it.
Well, God bless you, sir. And I know many people may be wondering and scratching their heads. Normally talk about space and topics like this, but no apology, because let's say this, Michael, and I know you and I both are brothers in this, and so many other brothers and sisters who now serve in law enforcement and in other areas like first responders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's very, very interesting to have you here because what I want to talk about 1 week from now, we're going to do, of course, another synopsis of special topics in dedication to the 249th birthday of America. What other topics would be more appropriate? I can think of none. But tell us about yourself, sir, how you got started. And ladies and gentlemen, 1-800-848-9222 if you're going to have any kind of commentary. We love to have what's called, Michael, here, and you know it better than I do probably. We like to have dialogue as one of the forms of conversation. Tell us how you got started and your background, sir.
Well, thank you so much for that opportunity, and I will tell you a little bit of background on myself. I grew up in Mexico, Guadalajara, Mexico. My parents were missionaries, and so I learned a different culture. But the interesting thing about Mexico that you do not hear often in the mainstream media is it is socialism and heavily leaning towards crossing the line into communism. Mm-hmm. And that is what they actually look for in this country. That is what our liberal ideological people who are trying to destroy this country, that's the way they want to do it. They want America to become a communistic society as well, so that there are no more bastions of freedom and hope for the world to see. Quite frankly, coming back from Mexico, my parents, my mother's side, had been in Columbia, South Carolina since the 1600s. So we have a large real estate holdings, and have a family trust. And quite frankly, went to Liberty University, graduated from there. That was the reason why I mentioned Liberty University. Of course, that was Jerry Falwell's school. And, at the time, they were doing the moral majority. Steve, you may remember that.
I do.
And so we were all across the country. I was his bodyguard. And the reason I was his bodyguard was I was also a competitive powerlifter, weightlifter. won national championships in 84 and 85. That was part of the deal, was that since I was also captain of the weightlifting team, I got to be his ex officio escort or bodyguard, and quite a learning experience for a young man to be traveling all across the country for the people we met. Being in the White House, of course, Ronald Reagan was the president at the time. And quite frankly, it was a very interesting experience. But after that, graduated, came back to Columbia, South Carolina, and helped the family out in real estate. The interesting part about real estate is you don't get anything accomplished when you talk real estate development unless you have political connections. Can't get permits, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
My grandfather served as the commissioner for the county for 50 some odd years. I followed in his footsteps. I served on council for 32 years. And when I served on council, here's how we got involved with Invest. One of the key things was I was the president of a Kiwanis club. Of course, you know, that's part of being in politics. You have to keep your name out in front of the people and
Absolutely.
make appearances.
Correct.
So we had a guest that didn't show up. I called the sheriff and asked him to send a deputy. I didn't care if he was a graduate of the new graduate or what he was doing. He could clean his gun for all I cared. But quite frankly, I needed a speaker. He did. And interestingly enough, in the question and answer session, somebody said, "Where's that vest thing that's supposed to protect you?" And I was surprised at his answer. He said, "Well, they're not provided by the department." So I had a friend of mine who was president of the Rotary Club. I sent him over there. Had somebody in the audience ask the same question, got the same response. So I called the sheriff and said, "I don't want to get your boy in trouble." But he says, "You don't have vests." He says, "We don't. You've never funded them for us." Well, I was just newly on council. So I was, of course, at the time when you're young and cocky, you think you can get in, you think you can whip the world. So I said, "No problem. We'll get that done for you right away." And put $500,000 in the budget, but I was unable to be in town the third reading. You know, it takes 3 readings to get something passed. And on third reading, I was out of town, and when I got back, I had all these reporters rushing me, saying, "Well, do you care to comment on why your colleagues took your $500,000 for vest out?" Well, I did something a politician's not supposed to do. You're supposed to think before you answer a question. I didn't, and I just off the cuff said, "Well, fine, if they feel that way about it. We'll just raise the money from the population, from the people themselves." I've not been able to find an exit strategy ever since. Of course, we started in Columbia. We completed the mission. It took us about 3 years to raise the $500,000 to make sure every officer in Columbia, South Carolina, Richland County deputy, had a vest. We had a few left over because we raised a little bit more than we needed. Interesting how the scenario took off. We have a town right outside of Columbia called Elgin. It's the old Mayberry town, one stoplight. Police chief called and said, "Look, we don't have any vests either. Do you have anything you could do to throw us a vest or two?" I said, "You're in luck. We've got 3 left, and that's how many you need. Be glad to give them to you. Don't want any publicity."
No, that's amazing, Michael. Yeah. I mean, you're doing a great service out there. No, you're doing a great service.
Hand them out. And
no, this is interesting. I just want you to identify so the audience, so they stay on focus with this, and so myself, investusa.org. And I spent a lot of time, unbeknownst to the audience, I spent a lot of time in the body armor industry myself without naming the companies because we don't want to be partial here. But I can just tell you, you're so right. And I cannot believe that so many agencies and so many different agency and different levels of the agencies. Some of these officers do not even have protective body armor. And it even goes to, and not to alarm the audience out there, even the necessity in many cases for people in the private sector that may also need this type of device where it's legal, for people to have this. But describe invest.org. If I wanted to get involved and let's say I'm a department, what do I do? How do I start the wheels of process here to go out and acquire these much needed vests for officers?
Well, 2 things. If they go to our website, that's INVESTUSA.org. It's a charity.org. Mm-hmm. Agencies can then make a request for vests on the website itself. And quite frankly, we have patterned it this way. It used to be on a first-come, first-served basis. But, we were losing so many officers from the line of duty. We've had to change our guidelines a little bit. Now, if an officer is killed in that agency, we give that agency priority and to make sure that they're outfitted. So they can do that and make sure they get as many vests as they need to cover their officers. And then, of course, the general public can make sure they support our officers and show them that we have their back. One of the things that came out of this charity, out of Invest USA, that certainly wasn't planned for. But it's amazing what happens to the morale of officers. You know, we have the lowest morale we've ever had in history.
Oh, yeah, I know why, too. Well, that's another subject, right.
Exactly. But when the officers see that the general public cares that much about them, because you have to understand, they very rarely get to see the positive side. They deal with the worst of the worst day in and day out. Very rarely do they get the appreciation or the kudos that they so rightly deserve. And so because of that, it's become a profession that we're losing more and more officers on a daily basis. But when they see the community rallying behind them and giving them protection for them and their families, you can't get any better than to know that the people want to make sure you come home safely to your family. It does a tremendous thing for their morale.
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.